Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am showing off my Scotland book haul. So as you guys may or may not know, I am married to a very lovely Scottish man who's currently upstairs building furniture, so if you hear thumping, it's probably fine. But we go back up to Edinburgh to go visit family and to go visit our favorite city, the place where he lived for most of his life and where I lived for one glorious year. And it is a wonderful place for book shopping. I lose my ever-loving mind when it comes to books and yarn whenever I'm up in Scotland. But in this particular trip, we also went to Wigtown, which is Scotland's national book town. It's a bit like Hay-on-Wye, but a little bit smaller, if you are familiar with Hay-on-Wye. And it is just absolutely filled with bookshops, and we had a great time. I especially had a great time if you check out the number of books that I bought. So I want to show these off because this is a really fantastic haul. It's not just because it's massive. There's a lot of really, really good stuff in here, if I do say so myself. So I am going to try to rapid fire this as much as possible, but I do tend to yap, so apologies. You might want to grab a cup of tea. But I bought used books and I bought new books, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the used books. So if you go to Wigtown, and you absolutely should because it's wonderful, you will find a whole plethora of used bookstores. They do have some new books, some of them stock some new books, but a lot of these are for secondhand books and especially for antique books. So it's a little bit of a book lover's paradise, and it is a wonderful place to just hunt around for some amazing books. So most of these are from Wigtown, but we do have one from an Edinburgh shop, which I'll talk about later. Another fun fact about me is that I used to collect antique copies of some of my favorite classics, so a lot of that is what we've got here. So without any further ado, I got a copy of The Hobbit by Tolkien for my Lord of the Rings collection because I also collect copies of the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well as The Hobbit, so this is one I didn't already have. This one is an old copy of Bleak House by Charles Dickens, and I'm a bit of a notorious Dickens hater. However, I've always wanted to read this one, and my mum, who is a big fan of Charles Dickens, says that this is one I'm probably going to like. Another fun fact that you may not know about me is that I am actually named after a book. So I found a copy of Justine by Lawrence Durrell. This is the first book in the Alexandria Quartet, and I have never read it. It's quite dense. I gave it a try when I was still living in New York. I must have been like 22. Now that I am a little bit older, I'm going to go ahead and give this another try. I'm very, very much looking forward to this. And this is such a cool edition. I love the cover. I love the colors. And even though it's quite beaten up, I just think this is so cool. One of my absolute favorite authors is Elizabeth Gaskell, so I got the oldest book from this haul, which is from 1891. This is a copy of Cranford. It's a little bit beaten up on the spine, but I don't mind. Cranford is very much my comfort read. I read it during a very difficult point in my life when I was in my early 20s, and I just loved it. I latched onto it really hard. So I still have that copy that I read, but I wanted to get this other one. It does have some illustrations in it as well. And one of my absolute favorite books of all time is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. So I saw this lovely Folio Society edition from 2003. They had a bunch of these, but I decided that I was only going to get this one. I'll keep an eye out for the rest of her books in this edition. But it has a beautiful cover, and it is also illustrated. And I also found a copy of Beauty by Robin McKinley. Now, she is an author kind of like Tamora Pierce, who is massively influential on a lot of current fantasy authors, but she's, I think, fallen maybe slightly more out of fashion than Tamora Pierce has. However, if you mention her name to someone who loves her, they will lose their mind. I've only read one of her books. I have a bunch of them on my shelf that I bought used last year, and I'm really looking forward to reading more. This is obviously a Beauty and the Beast retelling. She is wonderful with fairy tales. And last but not least, there is a bookshop in Edinburgh that I've been wanting to go to for a really long time. They do antique books and they do bookbinding services. It's the Gently Mad Bookshop. Would highly recommend. I'll put the list of all the bookshops that I visited in the notes below. But I found this copy of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales. I just completely and totally fell in love. So those are the used books that I got. The rest of these are books that I got from new bookshops. There's a lot of stuff here, so I'm going to try to group it together by genre. Okay, so now we have some short story collections and anthologies. The first of those being the British Library's collection of Celtic Weird, Tales of Wicked Folklore and Dark Mythology. I have had my eye on this for ages. They have done these really beautiful naked hardcover copies of like ghost stories, which I was very tempted by, folklore, mythology, all of that good stuff, and so this is the one that I ended up going for. I'm very excited for this. Because it's Scotland, I got a copy of supernatural short stories from both Sir Walter Scott and from Robert Louis Stevenson. I'll probably have read some of the Robert Louis Stevenson one. In fact, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is the very first one in this. I've also read The Body Snatcher, but the others I have not read, so that will be exciting. And I don't think I've ever read anything by Walter Scott before, so I'm very much looking forward to this. I got a copy of Haunted Tales by Adam McQueen as I was leaving Toppings, which is a wonderful bookstore. You'll see some of these plastic coverings on a fair few of these books. I spotted this on a table and I picked it up, already with an armful of books, and I flipped it open, and the very first story is called The Wrong Teletubby, and I was like, sold. I'm in. So this is Spooky Ghost Stories. This is apparently supposed to mimic like scary stories that you tell around the fire on a cold winter's night, which I love. And what I believe is the last collection of short stories is Hauntings by Vernon Lee. And this is super interesting. I saw this on the shelf at Typewronger, which was a new to me bookshop. It is wonderful. Cannot recommend more highly if you're going to visit. Their selection is incredible. For a shop that's not terribly large, it's beautifully curated. But this is a collection of like supernatural and ghost stories from an author that I don't think I have ever heard of. And it says at the beginning that this particular publisher seeks to uncover overlooked works by authors both famous and forgotten, unearth gems, and unite contemporary voices in conversation. So I don't know if this is a very well-known author or not, but at the back of this we have a sort of back and forth conversation, like interview style conversation between two authors about, it's called A Shadow Queerness. So presumably those are going to be some of the themes in these stories. And I was super interested in this. I'm very, very intrigued by this. And I absolutely love like the cover and kind of the aesthetics of this sort of matte textured book as well. I'm very easy to please. Now we have some nonfiction books. I got a fair few of these. One of the things that I would like to start doing when I travel is to get a book of not just the folklore or fairy tales of the particular place that I'm in, but also something nonfiction about the city or the place itself, especially if it happens to be spooky. And what place is spookier than Edinburgh? That city is haunted as hell. So I walked into Blackwells looking for one such book, and I ended up with 4, as well as many other titles. We do love Blackwells. So the first is The Town Below the Ground, Edinburgh's legendary underground city. If you were not aware, Edinburgh is kind of a city that's been built on top of itself. So there's vaults and such underground where people used to live in horrible conditions, and it's absolutely fascinating. You can go down to those vaults now, and they do try to scare you. But this sounded really interesting. So along with this, I also got Ghostly Tales and Sinister Stories of Old Edinburgh. Now, I'm not sure if this is like kind of true dark history of the city or if this is going to be some spooky stories, but regardless, I'm totally in. I also got a copy of Scotland's Forgotten Past, A History of the Mislaid, Misplaced, and Misunderstood, and this is by Alistair Moffat. This is basically about the things that we don't necessarily talk about when it comes to Scottish history. We know loads about the kings and queens and all such good stuff. These are the things that are a little bit more forgotten, which I'm very interested in. I picked up a copy of Damn Rebel Bitches by Maggie Craig. Apparently this is a 25th anniversary edition, and it is about the women who participated in the Jacobite uprising. This sounds great, and what an incredible title. I grabbed a copy of Sue Black's Written in Bones. So she's a forensic anthropologist who talks about our bodies, our bones, and what we leave behind. She is someone who was recommended to me by one of my British friends because I loved Smoke Gets in Your Eyes so much, and they thought that this would be a good match for me, so I'm really glad I finally spotted it. And the last of the nonfiction books, which has a title that just completely caught my eye, is How to Kill a Witch, a Guide for the Patriarchy. This is by Claire Mitchell and Zoe Vendidozzi. This is about the women who were identified as witches and killed. It talks about the torture, the identification, the bureaucratic processes, and apparently they use their characteristic wit and sharp humor in this book. So this sounds fabulous. We just had a small Dax-related accident in which a giant tower of books has fallen over. Okay, now I've got a bunch of horror and thriller books. One day, a bunch of these Blackwater books just popped up out of nowhere, and there's like 5 of them, and I've been staring at them ever since. I had not been able to figure out how I had never heard of this before. So I finally decided to grab a copy, and the guy at the till told me this is actually a reprint of an old series, which is why like 5 of them came out at once. And this sounds really interesting, but honestly, I'm mostly intrigued by the cover. I've had my eye on Fragile Animals by Genevieve Jagger for quite a while. It just says on the back here, when an ex-Catholic woman develops a sexual relationship with a vampire, she is forced to confront the memories that haunt her religious past. Sold. A book that I think has only just been released is On Sundays She Picked Flowers by Yaya Schofield. I've had my eye on this for quite a while. It looks fantastic, and it's Southern Gothic, which is one of my favorite genres. Apparently it's a sinister and surreal Southern Gothic tale about retribution and building yourself back up after you have been broken. I think that Holy Boy by Lee Hee-ju only just came out like the day before I spotted it in a shop, and I saw it on Instagram the day before, and it looks so good. So this is about a group of women who are absolutely fanatics about a particular K-pop singer, and they kidnap him, and weirdly it doesn't go according to plan. I do love like a proper gothic tale, so I picked up a copy of A Slow and Secret Poison by Carmela Locus. This takes place in 1922 Wiltshire, not Yorkshire, and this looks like fabulous historical gothic fiction. One of my favorite subgenres of horror is small town horror, so I was very drawn to Curdle Creek by Yvonne Battle Felton. This is also from Toppings, as you can see from its little shiny plastic case. This is about a small all-black town in rural America that has a one-in and one-out policy, and our main character is kicked out and she has to confront everything that she's ever thought she's known. Next up, I have The Hill in the Dark Grove by Liam Higginson. This is apparently a spooky, creepy, slow burn about two Welsh sheep farmers who discover prehistoric ruins on their property, and as winter begins to set in, it's very clear that something is now wrong with the husband. I'll Be the Monster by Sean Gilbert is a book that sold me with one singular line, and that is, a homicidal couple embarks on a luxury holiday to save their marriage. Again, sold. And last but not least, for kind of horror thriller books, I have Greedy, and this is by Kelly Kazumi. This is about a man named Ed who is in trouble with the Yakuza because of gambling debts, and he takes on a job as a private chef for someone who has peculiar tastes, shall we say. This is another one that's just come out, and it looks really, really good. I'm so glad I found a copy. And last but not least, we've got our fantasy books. In Wigtown, I found a copy of one of my absolute favorite books from my childhood, and that is The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. I am pretty sure there's a direct line between this book and my deep, deep love of books and words now. If you've never read The Phantom Tollbooth, then oh my god, you absolutely should, especially if you love like words and wordplay and puns. So it's about a boy named Milo who is down in the dumps. He's clearly very depressed, and one day he comes home to a mysterious giant package in his bedroom. He unwraps it, and it's a little toll booth, and so he goes into his little toy car that I always wanted when I was a kid. He drives through the toll booth, and it transports him to a magical land that is very, very literal. So there are many wonderful characters in this book, including Talk, the watchdog. So he's a watchdog, and he goes tick, 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 even though he is named Talk. We, of course, have the spelling bee, who's a literal bee. Love it. This book is just so fun. I just absolutely loved this so much. I learned so much from this. I haven't read it since I was quite young, and I'm really looking forward to picking it up again. I just had another book tower related accident. So this also happened in a yarn shop where I was hemming and hawing over something that was a little bit pricey that I had wanted to get, always wanted to get, but never ended up getting. And Scottish husband was like, you have bought so many books, or in that previous case, yarn, on this trip. Why is this the line in the sand that you're drawing? And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. So I got the special editions of The Poppy War and the Dragon Republic. I have yet to finish this series. The Burning God is a book that I keep picking up and putting down because the end of the Dragon Republic kind of broke me a little bit. But I would really, really like to reread these and then finish off the series. I recommended it to Scottish husband because it's super grim and he loves a grim book. So these are beautiful. I've wanted them for absolute ages, and I'm really, really glad that I let myself be talked into this. He didn't exactly have to twist my arm though. The next book that I have looks like an absolute hoot. So this is Sisters Svangard and the Not Quite Dead by KJ Parker. I have never read any of his books, but I have seen many of them and I've been very tempted by them before. I'm trying to do this video kind of rapid fire style as much as humanly possible for me, but I am going to take the chance to read the back of this book for you because I think it's worth it. So, not even the Church of the Invincible Sun is invincible, and someone has to do its dirty work. Enter Sister Svangard and her accompanying priest, both accomplished practitioners. Their mission is simple, to make a meddlesome princess disappear permanently. To get to her, they must attend the legendary Ecumenical Council, the once-in-a-century convening of the greatest spiritual minds the world has to offer. But when they arrive, they find instead a den of villainy that would make most hardened criminals blush. To complicate matters further, it appears that some people, long considered dead, might not be after all. What began as a simple murder is about to escalate into a theological debate of terrifying complexity. This sounds great. I cannot wait to read this. One of my favorite books from a few years ago is The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep. And if you love books and you love books about books and you love classics, especially if you love Dickens, you must give that book a try if you haven't. I've not read any of her other books, but I did see The Scholar in the Last Fairy Door by H.G. Perry on the shelves in Blackwells, and I decided to pick it up. This is historical fantasy. It's very much what she does incredibly well, and I'm really, really intrigued by this. I have a few friends who have read this and have absolutely loved it. I had no idea that there was a new Brandon Sanderson book out, so I grabbed a copy of Isles of the Emberdark. Apparently it's a Cosmere novel. I believe it's a standalone, and yeah, easily sold on that one. I haven't read a huge amount of Brandon Sanderson in a really long time, and I worry that I might have fallen a little out of love with him. So I'm really looking forward to picking up one of his new books and kind of getting back into him, because I have discovered so much amazing fantasy because of Brandon Sanderson, and I really want to get back to my roots. I could also just reread Mistborn. That would be fabulous. And last but not least is one that I am so incredibly excited for. I felt a little bit like I won the lottery because I found a copy of Cleopatra by Sara El Arifi on the shelves in Toppings, and it's not out until the end of the month. I think that the reason that this book was out early is because they are doing an event with her, and apparently if you bought a copy of the book, you would automatically get a ticket to the event. Unfortunately, I will not be in Edinburgh at that time, so I was very, very sad, but I'm so happy that I managed to grab this. This is a retelling of Cleopatra and her life, and it sounds wonderful. I'm so excited for this. This is one I would really, really like to pick up soon because I think it's going to be fabulous. So those are the books that I bought while I was in Scotland, both in Wigtown and in Edinburgh. Again, I will try to list all of the shops that I went to if I can remember the names of everywhere, especially in Wigtown, that I went to. I'll put them in the kind of notes below so you can go ahead and have a look. I would love to hear in the comments below if you have read any of these books. Please let me know where I should start, or if you have anything that you picked up recently, I would love to hear. That is it for this video, and I will talk to you soon.